The mysterious wake-up James woke up with a start, his heart pounding in his chest. The first thing he noticed was the cold air around him. It was strange, because just a few hours ago, his room had felt warm and cozy. Now, everything was different. The room felt colder than usual, and the silence was thick, like something was hiding in it. He blinked, trying to adjust his eyes to the dim light coming through the blinds. As he shifted in bed, he felt something heavy on top of him. At first, he thought it was just the blanket, but when he reached up to pull it off, he froze. There was someone lying on top of him, a woman. James' heart skipped a beat. The woman was staring down at him, her face only inches away from his. Her eyes were wide open, but her expression was blank, like she was waiting for something. For a moment, he couldn't move or speak. His mind raced. Who was she? How had she gotten into his room? The woman didn't say anything, but she shifted slightly, and James felt a strange weight in the air between them. It wasn't physical, but it was there. A strange energy that made the hairs on his arms stand up. His voice was hoarse when he finally found it. "Who are you?" he managed to ask, his words coming out in a low whisper. She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she reached down and touched his forehead gently. Her fingers were cool, almost too cool. It wasn't like the touch of a regular person. There was something ... different about it. James could feel the cold seeping into his skin, but it didn't hurt. It felt strangely soothing, like a breeze on a hot summer day. Still, his mind was racing. This was impossible. He had just moved into this new house yesterday. His first night here was supposed to be peaceful, a fresh start after everything he'd been through. But now, here was this woman on top of him, and nothing made sense. "Who are you?" James asked again, his voice a little stronger this time. The woman didn't answer right away, but her eyes seemed to study him more closely, as though she was analyzing every detail of his face. Her gaze lingered on him, and for a moment, James felt as if she was looking into his very soul. There was something in her eyes, deep, ancient knowledge that sent a shiver down his spine. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, she spoke. "I'm your housekeeper," she said, in a soft, almost ethereal voice. "But not in the way you think." James blinked. "Housekeeper? What do you mean?" The woman smiled, but it wasn't a comforting smile. It was more like a knowing smile, as if she already knew everything about him and what he was about to ask. It was almost as if she had been waiting for this moment. "I've been sent to you," she explained. "I'm not here just to clean. I'm here for ... other reasons." Her words hung in the air, thick with mystery. James tried to push her off him, but his body felt heavy. It was as if he was glued to the bed, unable to move. He tried again, more forcefully this time, but still nothing. It was as if her presence was weighing him down, stopping him from doing anything. "Why are you on top of me?" James asked, the question finally escaping his lips. The woman's eyes softened, but her expression remained calm, unreadable. "You're not in any danger," she said. "I just needed to connect with you. There's something important I have to show you." At that moment, James noticed something strange. On the woman's wrist, just above her sleeve, was a symbol. It looked like an intricate pattern, something that didn't belong in this world. It glowed faintly, almost as if it was alive, and it seemed to pulse with a soft light. His eyes widened. "What is that?" The woman didn't seem surprised by his question. She just looked at him quietly for a few moments before answering. "It's a symbol of my people," she said. "A mark of those who are ... chosen. Chosen for what?" James asked, his voice a little more forceful now, his confusion growing. The woman smiled again, but this time there was a trace of something darker in her eyes. "You're about to find out," she said cryptically. James felt his heart race again, but this time it wasn't just from fear. There was a sense of anticipation building inside him, something he couldn't quite explain. Something told him that this was just the beginning, that his life was about to change forever. The woman's gaze never left him, and for a long moment, neither of them moved. The room was still silent, and James couldn't shake the feeling that something huge was about to happen. He didn't know how he knew, but deep inside, he could feel it. Then, just as quickly as she had appeared, the woman slowly slid off him. She stood up, looking down at him with those strange, knowing eyes. "You'll understand soon enough," she said. "But first, you need to trust me. There's much to learn and very little time." James could only watch in silence as she turned and walked out of the room, leaving him alone with his thoughts, his confusion, and the feeling that his life would never be the same again. The unexpected conversation. James sat there in stunned silence, staring at the spot where the woman had been only moments ago. His mind raced, struggling to make sense of what had just happened. A housekeeper he couldn't understand. He had just moved into this house a day ago, and he hadn't expected anything out of the ordinary. Certainly not, ... This, the room still, felt strange, as though something invisible was pressing in around him. The woman's strange symbol kept flashing in his mind, mark of those who are chosen. He shivered, though he wasn't sure why. Was he in danger? Was he part of something? He didn't understand. After a long pause, James finally stood up, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on him. He needed answers. He couldn't just sit here wondering. Slowly, he moved toward the door and opened it, stepping into the hallway. His legs felt heavy, like the air was thicker than usual. Every step felt slower than normal. The woman was standing at the far end of the hall. She turned when she heard his footsteps, her expression calm but unreadable. She didn't seem surprised that he had followed her. In fact, it almost felt like she'd been expecting him to do this all along. "Come," she said, her voice soft yet firm. "There's much I need to explain." James hesitated for a moment. Every instinct in his body screamed for him to run, to get out of this strange house and leave behind whatever secrets were hidden within. But something about her, something about the way she spoke, ... made him stay. He didn't know what it was, but his curiosity was stronger than his fear. He had to know more. He walked toward her, his steps tentative, as if walking on unfamiliar ground. She led him down a long corridor, past closed doors and silent rooms. The house felt unnervingly empty, as if it was waiting for something to happen. The walls, though pristine, had a kind of coldness to them, as if the house itself was aware of the strangeness that had entered it. They reached a small room at the end of the hallway. It was nothing special, just a simple, quiet space with an old chair, a wooden desk, and a few scattered papers on the floor. But as James stepped inside, he noticed something peculiar. A soft, glowing light seemed to come from the walls, as though the room itself was alive. The air felt charged, like static electricity before a storm. It was subtle, but it was there, and it made him feel more aware of everything around him. The woman gestured for him to sit. "This is where we can talk without interruption," she said. "You may have questions, and I will answer them. But first, I need you to listen carefully." James sat down slowly, his mind swirling. His heart pounded as he looked up at her, waiting for her to continue. He had so many questions, but none of them seemed to come out. He felt like he was drowning in confusion. She seemed so calm, so certain about everything, as though she knew exactly what was going to happen next. "I know this is all overwhelming for you," the woman began, sitting across from him. "But you need to understand. It's what you've been told about humanity, and this planet takes not the whole truth. Earth is not just a peaceful, isolated world. It's been watched, protected, and even manipulated for a very long time. And you James are an important part of that story. James blinked, trying to make sense of what she was saying. Protected? Manipulated? What are you talking about? He asked, his voice shaky. She nodded slowly, her eyes locked on his. You're a part of something bigger than you realize. Your people, your history, it's all part of a larger galactic picture. The truth is, humans are far more powerful than you think. You've only scratched the surface of your potential. James stared at her, unsure if he was dreaming. Was this some kind of sick joke? Or was she trying to mess with his head? But the way she spoke, the way she carried herself, he could see in her eyes that she wasn't lying. There was no malice in her voice, just ... truth, in a way he couldn't fully understand. Who are you? He finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. What are you? The woman's gaze softened, as though she had been waiting for this question. She leaned forward slightly. I'm someone who has been sent here to prepare you. My people, what you might call aliens, have been watching Earth for centuries. But the time for watching is over. The time for action is here. James felt a chill run down his spine. His mind couldn't process all the information, but he felt the weight of her words pressing down on him. He wanted to shout, to run, to get away from whatever was happening, but there was something in her eyes that stopped him. Your world is on the brink of a change, she continued. The old ways are no longer enough to protect humanity. The rest of the galaxy is watching, and your people have been chosen to either rise or fall, and that choice, it starts with you. The words hung in the air like a storm cloud. James felt his breath catch in his throat. But ... how? Why me? I'm just a regular guy. I'm no one special. The woman's lips curved into a small smile. You may not feel special, but your bloodline is. The power within you is stronger than you know. It's time for you to unlock it. James stared at her, his mind reeling. His life had just turned upside down, and he didn't know if he was ready for whatever was coming next. But one thing was clear, he couldn't run from this. Something much bigger than himself had just entered his world, and now there was no turning back. The truth about humanity's secret. James sat back in the chair, trying to process everything that the woman who had now revealed herself as something other than human had just told him. His mind felt like it was being pulled in every direction at once, the pieces of the puzzle just out of reach. The woman had spoken with such calm certainty, but his heart was racing and his stomach twisted in confusion. Everything you think you know about Earth, she had said, about humanity's history, is incomplete. There's so much more to the story, and you are a part of it, whether you're ready or not. She had just called him chosen, but for what? Why was he the one singled out? And what did she mean by a part of something bigger? The woman who, as she had explained, was from a distant alien civilization was still standing by the small desk, her eyes never leaving James. He could feel her presence, like a constant pressure in the room, pushing against him, forcing him to listen, to understand. But the more she spoke, the more it all seemed impossible. He tried to shake the feeling of disbelief from his mind. She watched him carefully before speaking again, as if waiting for him to catch up. Let me tell you the truth, she said, her voice low and serious. Your species, humanity, is not as simple as you've been led to believe. For centuries, Earth has been a quiet outpost in a much larger galactic community. But for reasons you'll soon understand, humanity has been kept in the dark about what's really going on in the universe. James blinked, feeling like he was falling into a dark abyss. Galactic community. What was she talking about? He had always thought the universe was vast, but this was beyond anything he had ever imagined. You see, she continued, her voice steady. Humans have a unique potential, untapped power that many of the more advanced species in the galaxy are aware of. but they've been keeping it hidden from you. You're capable of things that most of the galaxy doesn't even know exist." James could barely catch his breath. "What kind of power? What are you talking about?" The woman moved closer to him, her eyes glimmering with a strange intensity. "The power to evolve, James, to grow beyond what you are now. Humanity's potential is limitless, but it's been shackled by the things you've been taught to believe. You've been kept in the dark, thinking you're just like any other species in the galaxy. But you're not. You've been watched for a long time by us." James felt a lump form in his throat. This wasn't just some conspiracy theory. This was something far bigger, something that reached into the very core of his existence. He had no idea what to believe anymore, but the woman's words, the weight of them, made it hard to ignore. "So, you've been watching us this whole time?" he asked, his voice shaky. His world felt like it was spinning, and he wasn't sure which way was up anymore. "Yes," she nodded. "For centuries, our race, the Valorians, have been observing your world. We've been guiding humanity in small ways, nudging things in the right direction when needed. But we've kept our distance, watching you grow. We've waited for you to reach a certain point. And now that you're here, at this critical moment, the time has come for you to understand your true place in the universe." "Why me?" James asked, almost pleading. "Why me? I'm just a regular guy. I don't know anything about this." The woman's eyes softened, and for the first time, she smiled, though it was a bittersweet smile. "You may think you're just a regular guy, but your bloodline has a unique connection to something very old. Your ancestors were part of a select group of humans who were chosen for this very moment. Your blood holds the key to unlocking humanity's potential." James felt his pulse quicken. A chosen bloodline. This was getting stranger by the second. He had always thought of himself as normal, just an ordinary guy with a normal life. But now, nothing seemed normal. He wanted to ask more questions, to push for answers, but he didn't even know where to begin. "You're not the only one," she continued, reading the confusion in his eyes. "There are others, a select few, like you. People who will help lead humanity into its next stage of evolution. You've been chosen to awaken what's inside you. But it's not just about your power, it's about your mind, your perception. You must see the world differently if you want to understand what's really happening." James shook his head, trying to piece it together. "So you're saying humans have the power to evolve? To become something more than we are now?" The woman nodded slowly. "Exactly. Your species has the potential to become something more than the galaxy has ever seen. But there are others out there who want to keep humanity from realizing this power. The Wrecker, a dangerous and ruthless race, seeks to prevent your evolution. They want to enslave Earth, take control of your planet, and suppress what you could become." James felt a chill run through him. He wasn't sure he was ready for any of this, but the urgency in her voice made him realize that whatever was coming next was unavoidable. "You need to be ready," she said. "The Wrecker are coming, and they're not the only ones. Your species is on the edge of something monumental, but it all starts with you, with people like you who are ready to evolve." James took a deep breath. His world had been turned upside down. One moment, he was a regular person trying to adjust to a new house. The next moment, he was told that humanity had hidden powers, and that his bloodline was tied to unlocking those powers. "Are you going to help me?" he asked, still struggling to process everything. "I already have," she replied. "The training begins now." The alien threat. The walls of the small room felt like they were closing in on James. He sat at the desk, trying to process the weight of everything the woman, the Valorian, had just told him. Humanity had hidden powers. There were alien races out there, watching Earth, and he was somehow tied to it all. And now, the most terrifying part, the Wrecker. An alien race determined to crush humanity's potential were coming. They were already here, and they were not the only threat. His mind raced, but the more he thought about it, the harder it became to focus. The world he had known was gone. In its place, something darker and more complex had emerged, something he couldn't escape. "You said the Wrecker are coming. When?" he finally managed to ask, his voice hoarse, barely above a whisper. He wasn't sure he wanted to know, but he had to. There was no turning back now. The Valorian woman stood by the window, staring out at the horizon. Her figure seemed to glow faintly in the dim light of the room. "They're already here," she said, her voice calm but heavy with meaning. "They've been observing Earth for a while, waiting for the right moment. They've infiltrated human society, disguised themselves, and manipulated your governments. But the time for secrecy is over. They're preparing to strike." James felt a shiver run down his spine. The Wrecker, it seemed, were no ordinary invaders. They were cunning, ruthless, and patient. The idea that they had already been here, blending into human society, made his skin crawl. Asterisk. "How do you know all of this?" he asked, standing up and walking toward her. "How can you be so sure they're coming? You said they've infiltrated us. How do we stop them?" The Valorian woman turned to face him, her eyes piercing, as if she could see right through him. "The Wrecker are masters of deception. They have already started to manipulate key leaders, pushing them toward war, division, and chaos. They thrive on fear. They know that, as long as humanity is divided, it will never reach its potential. Your species is on the brink of something powerful, but they want to stop it before it can begin." She paused for a moment, letting her words sink in. James was starting to feel the weight of her warnings, but there was still a part of him that refused to believe it. How could this all be real? How could humanity, a species that barely understood space travel, have any chance against a force like the Wrecker? "I don't understand," James said, frustration creeping into his voice. "How can I stop them? I'm just ... me. I'm not special. I don't even know what this power is that you're talking about." The Valorian woman's gaze softened, and she stepped closer to him. "You're not alone in this, James. There are other humans like you who have the same potential. You've all been chosen to help lead your species into the next phase of evolution. But to do that, you must first awaken the power within yourself. You must trust me, and trust in what you're capable of." James shook his head, feeling overwhelmed. "And if I can't, if I'm not ready, what happens then?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached out and placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch surprisingly warm. "The Wrecker are relentless. If you and the others don't act soon, they will take control of Earth, and your world will fall under their shadow. They will extinguish the hope of humanity ever rising to its full potential. But it doesn't have to be that way. You have a choice." James wanted to believe her, wanted to think that he could somehow make a difference. But everything seemed so impossible. The weight of the galaxy, of the entire human race, was resting on his shoulders. He could feel it, a pressure deep inside him that made it hard to breathe. "What should I do?" Kay asked, his voice barely a whisper. The Valorian woman's expression grew serious. "We must act now. The Wrecker are preparing their assault. And we don't have much time. I will train you, help you unlock the abilities you have within you. But first, you must understand the magnitude of what's at stake. This isn't just a fight for Earth. It's a fight for the future of your species." She paused, her eyes locking with his. "The Wrecker are coming. And when they do, you must be ready. You must stand with me and the others like you. Together. You can defeat them, but it starts with you. You are the key." The words felt like a weight, but also like a spark. James could feel it, a flicker of something deep inside him, something waiting to be unlocked. He didn't know how or when it would happen, but the idea that he could be a part of something much bigger than himself. It was both terrifying and exhilarating. "I don't know how I'll do this," James said, his voice filled with doubt. "But I'll try. I have to try." The Valorian woman nodded, her expression approving. "That's all anyone can ask of you. Now, let's begin." She led him to a small, hidden chamber deep within the house, a place James hadn't seen before. It was filled with strange symbols, glowing softly against the walls. The air felt thick with energy, as though the very room was alive. The woman motioned for him to stand in the center of the room, where a large, circular pattern had been drawn on the floor. "This is where you will begin to unlock your potential," she said, her voice low. "But first, you must learn to connect with the energy that surrounds you. You must learn to feel it, understand it, and control it." James stepped into the center of the circle, his heart racing. He didn't know what to expect, but he knew one thing for sure: his life, and the fate of humanity, was about to change forever. The call to action, James stood in the center of the room. The glow from the strange symbols on the floor casting eerie shadows on the walls. His heart pounded in his chest as he stared down at the intricate designs beneath him. They seemed to pulse with a life of their own, shifting ever so slightly as if reacting to his presence. The air felt charged, thick with an energy he couldn't explain, and it made his skin tingle. His mind raced with questions that had no answers. The Valorian woman, who had introduced herself only as Lyra, stood beside him, watching him closely. Her gaze was calm, but there was a fire in her eyes. She wasn't just here to explain. She was here to make him understand, to awaken something deep inside him. "Are you ready?" Lyra's voice broke the silence, and it sounded more like a command than a question. James hesitated. Ready? He wasn't even sure what he was supposed to be ready for. A moment ago, he had been living an ordinary life, and now he was standing in a glowing room, facing an unknown power that could change the entire course of his future. The weight of everything he'd learned in the past few days pressed down on him like a ton of bricks. He wasn't a hero. He was just James, an average man, caught up in something far too big for him to understand. But despite the fear swirling inside him, something deep within him stirred. There was a flicker, a spark, a quiet voice telling him that this was his path, that he was here for a reason. "I guess there's no turning back now, is there?" James said, trying to steady his voice. Lyra's lips curved into a small, approving smile. "No. But there's no need to fear. You've already taken the first step." The air in the room seemed to thrum as she reached out and placed her hand on his shoulder. "The power you're about to unlock will not come easily, James. It's not just about strength. It's about understanding. You must learn to connect with the energy that binds everything together, the energy that flows through every living being, every atom, every star. It is the source of all power." James could feel her words vibrating in his chest, like a distant hum that resonated deep within him. He didn't understand it, but he felt something shift. He looked down at his hands, as though they might suddenly crack open and reveal something hidden within. But nothing happened. He felt ... ordinary. "What do I do?" he asked, still unsure of how to proceed. Lyra took a step back, her expression serious. "You must focus. Close your eyes, clear your mind, and let go of everything you think you know. Trust in the energy around you. It's been here all along. You just need to feel it." James swallowed hard. He wanted to believe her, but part of him felt ridiculous. He was standing in a glowing room, trying to tap into some invisible force that could change the course of humanity. But he had no choice. The Wrecker were coming. They had to be stopped, and somehow it was up to him. Taking a deep breath, James closed his eyes. He focused on the steady rhythm of his breathing, trying to calm the storm of thoughts in his mind. For a moment, everything felt still. The chaos, the fear, the uncertainty, all of it melted away. He focused on his body, on the feeling of the ground beneath his feet, the air filling his lungs, and then it happened. A sensation unlike anything he had ever experienced washed over him. It was as though the very fabric of reality had shifted, as though the room itself had opened up, revealing a vast, unseen world of light and energy. He could feel it now, the pulsing energy around him, flowing through him, connecting him to everything. It was alive, fluid, like a river of power that he had never noticed before. He gasped, stumbling back as the energy surged through him. His chest felt tight, and for a brief moment he feared he might suffocate. But then it opened up wide, expansive, like the floodgates of a dam had been opened. His vision blurred, and a surge of warmth flooded through his body. His heart beat faster, not in panic, but in sync with the rhythm of the universe itself. Good. Lyra's voice broke through the storm of sensations. Now you're feeling it. You're connected. The power is within you, James. You are no longer just a man. You are a part of something greater. James opened his eyes, but the world around him had changed. It was as though his senses had been heightened. He could feel the energy in the room, in the walls, even in the very air. He could sense the presence of Lyra beside him, and something else, a presence, distant but closing in. What is this? He asked, his voice shaky, but filled with awe. This is only the beginning, Lyra replied. Now that you've connected with the energy, you must learn to control it. You have the power to manipulate the world around you, to bend energy, to move objects, to create. But you must be careful. With great power comes great responsibility. And the wrecker will stop at nothing to see you fail. James nodded, still feeling the after effects of the surge of power. It was overwhelming, but he could sense the truth in her words. The wrecker weren't just an alien threat, they were the embodiment of everything humanity had to fight against. They wanted to keep humanity weak, powerless, ignorant of its potential. But now, armed with this knowledge, James had a chance to fight back. I'm ready, James said, more confidently now. I have to be. Lyra's gaze softened, a flicker of approval in her eyes. Good. The training will be intense, but you are not alone. Others like you are awakening as well. Together, you can lead humanity to victory. James felt a renewed sense of purpose flood through him. This was it. The moment he had been waiting for, whether he realized it or not. He wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. He was fighting for humanity's future. The call to action had been made. And there was no turning back. Betrayal unveiled the days that followed, felt like a blur to James. After unlocking his latent power in the glowing chamber, he had spent hours training under Lyra's careful guidance. She had been patient, yet insistent, teaching him how to control the energy that now surged through him. It wasn't easy. Every time he felt he had a grasp on it, the power would slip away, like trying to hold water in his hands. But little by little, he began to understand how to focus, how to manipulate the energy around him. He could move objects, now small things at first. A cup or a book, but it was a start. He could feel the pull of the energy, the hum beneath his skin, and he knew it was only a matter of time before he could control more. Lyra was always there, watching him, guiding him through the process. And while her training methods were intense, she never faltered in her belief that he could do this. But something was different. There were moments, small moments, that James couldn't ignore. When Lyra's eyes lingered too long on him, or when she spoke about the wrecker with a fire. That seemed more personal than he expected. There were times when the air felt thick with tension, like she was holding something back. But every time James asked, she brushed it off, reassuring him that everything was going as planned. Yet as the days passed, a feeling of unease began to settle in his chest. He didn't know what it was, but it gnawed at him like an itch. He couldn't scratch. Something didn't feel right. It was late one evening when the truth came crashing down. James had been practicing in the training room, his focus entirely on moving a heavy chair across the floor. He'd managed to get it to float a few inches off the ground, but it wobbled and then dropped with a loud thud. He groaned in frustration, wiping the sweat from his brow. "You're getting closer." Lyra's voice came from behind him, soft and reassuring. He turned, ready to thank her for the encouragement, but something in her gaze made him freeze. It wasn't the usual calm, controlled look she always wore. There was something darker in her eyes now, something almost ... cold. "I'm sorry," he said, trying to hide his growing suspicion. "I thought I had it this time." Lyra stepped closer, her movements graceful, almost predatory. "Don't apologize," she said, her voice smoother than before. "You're doing well, James, but there's something more I need to tell you." James felt a chill creep up his spine. "What do you mean?" Lyra's lips curled into a small smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You've been so eager to learn, so eager to awaken your power. But what if I told you that everything you've been taught has been a lie?" James took a step back, his heart pounding in his chest. "What are you talking about?" Her smile faded, and for the first time, her face was void of emotion. "I'm not here to help you, James. I never was." The words hit him like a punch to the gut. He blinked, trying to process what she had just said. "No, ... that's not possible. You've trained me. You've helped me." Lyra's eyes narrowed, her posture stiffening. "That's because I had to. You see, James, I've been playing a role a part in a much bigger game. My true mission was never to help you evolve. My mission was to keep you distracted long enough for the wrecker to make their move." The room felt like it was closing in on him, his chest tightening as he fought to breathe. "You ... you're working with a wrecker." His voice barely whispered the words. Lyra's lips twitched in what might have been a hint of regret, but her eyes were cold as ice. "Yes, James, I am one of them. I've been sent to watch over you, to make sure you reached a certain point in your training. You were supposed to be the key to unlocking humanity's potential, but only to lead them to their doom. The wrecker have been manipulating humanity for far longer than you can imagine." James stumbled backward, his hands shaking as the floor beneath him seemed to shift. He couldn't believe it. Everything he had been taught was a lie. Lyra wasn't his ally. She had been playing him from the start. The power she had helped him unlock, the promises of his potential, the warnings of the record was all part of a plan to control him, to control humanity. "Why?" James asked, his voice hoarse. "Why did you do this?" Lyra's gaze softened, though there was no warmth in it. "Because it was my mission. I was sent to make sure you reached your full potential so that you could lead humanity into the arms of the wrecker. We want Earth. We want its resources, its people, and most of all, its untapped power. And you were the perfect pawn." James felt the ground beneath him shift, as though the very foundations of his world had crumbled. He had trusted her. He had believed in her, in the purpose she had shown him. Now, all of it felt like a cruel joke, but anger started to build within him, anger at the betrayal, at the deception, at the manipulation. He had been used, but he wouldn't be controlled. Not anymore. "You're wrong," James said, his voice growing stronger. "I won't let you do this. I won't let the wrecker win." Lyra's eyes flashed with a mixture of surprise and something like ... disappointment. "You think you can stop this? You're still weak, James. You haven't even begun to realize the extent of your power. And now, it's too late." She turned to leave, her steps slow and deliberate, but James could feel the anger burning within him. He wouldn't let this be the end. Not for him. Not for humanity. Lyra. Qua, he called out, his voice raw. You're wrong. I'm not your pawn. I'm not anyone's pawn, and I'll stop you. Her cold laugh echoed in the silence as she disappeared from the room, leaving James alone. But one thing was clear. Now this fight was far from over. Lyra's betrayal had opened his eyes to the truth, and he would not back down. The final battle. The silence in the room was deafening after Lyra's departure. Her cold words still echoed in James' mind, each one striking deeper than the last. She was working with the Wrecker. All along, she had been manipulating him, using him to lead humanity straight into their grasp. The shock of her betrayal still hung heavy in his chest, but it was quickly overshadowed by a surge of fury. James clenched his fists, his body shaking with the force of the emotions flooding through him. He had been a fool. He had trusted the woman who had trained him, guided him, who had made him believe that his power would save humanity. But now he saw it all clearly. The power she had helped him unlock, the teachings, the promises, they had all been part of a plan to control him, to control humanity, and that was something he could never allow. Without a second thought, he turned toward the door and ran out of the room. His heart pounded in his chest, but there was a new fire burning inside him now. He wasn't going to let Lyra or the Wrecker win. He wasn't going to be their pawn anymore. The house seemed eerily quiet as he made his way through the hallways, the weight of his footsteps echoing in the stillness. He had to act quickly. Lyra had already set her plan into motion, and the Wrecker were no doubt preparing for the final strike. He didn't know exactly what they were planning, but he knew it would be catastrophic for Earth, and he knew that. For humanity to survive, he would have to stop it now. He reached the training room where he had spent so many hours, the place where he had first unlocked his power. The energy still hummed in the air, but this time it felt different. This time it felt like a weapon that he now understood how to wield. James closed his eyes and took a deep breath. The Wrecker were coming. The future of humanity rested on his shoulders. He couldn't afford to be weak. He couldn't afford to hesitate. He reached out, focusing on the energy he had learned to control. It was there, just beneath the surface, waiting for him to tap into it. His mind cleared as he began to pull the energy toward him, feeling it course through his body. The power was raw, untamed, and unlike anything he had felt before. It surged through his veins like fire, burning away any remnants of doubt or fear. He had to control it. He had to focus. The energy was there, ready to be shaped, and it was his to command. A sudden, sharp noise pulled James from his concentration. He opened his eyes just in time to see the doors to the training room burst open. Standing in the doorway was Lyra. But she wasn't alone. Behind her, a group of Wrecker soldiers stepped into the room. Their forms cloaked in dark, shadowy armor that seemed to absorb the light around them. Their eyes glowed with an unsettling, unnatural light, and their weapons blades that looked like they were made from the very fabric of space, ripped with lethal intent. Lyra's expression was unreadable, but there was a sense of finality. In her presence, "It's over. James," she said, her voice cool and detached. "You should have understood by now. The Wrecker will not be stopped. This is the way things are meant to be." James stood his ground, his fists clenched. He wasn't going to let her win. He wasn't going to let them take everything he had fought for. "No, Lyra," he said, his voice firm, filled with determination. "It's over for you." The room crackled with tension as the two forces faced off. Lyra's eyes flickered with something akin to pity, but it quickly disappeared, replaced by the cold determination that had driven her actions all along. "You've always been a tool, James," she said, her voice almost regretful. "But you'll learn soon enough that you can't fight fate. The Wrecker are too powerful. You were never meant to be their savior. You were meant to lead humanity to its destruction." With a wave of her hand, the Wrecker soldiers advanced, their weapons raised. But James wasn't backing down. He could feel the energy within him now, a force that was more than just raw power. It was his will, his determination, everything he had come to understand about humanity's potential. He wasn't going to let Lyra and the Wrecker take that away. Without warning, he thrust his hands forward, releasing the energy he had gathered. The room seemed to shudder as the force rippled outward, sending the Wrecker soldiers flying backward. Their armor groaned and cracked under the sheer force of the blast. But they quickly regained their composure, snarling in anger. Lyra stepped back, watching the confrontation unfold. "Impressive," she murmured. "But it won't be enough." James's heart raced, but he didn't let up. He reached deeper within himself, drawing on the power he had barely begun to understand. He could feel the energy connecting him to everything, to Earth itself. And now he understood. This wasn't just about him. It was about humanity's future. About the future of every living being on this planet. With a shout, he sent another blast of energy toward the Wrecker soldiers, knocking several of them off their feet. The room filled with a deafening roar as the ground beneath them began to crack and shake. The energy he was wielding was unstoppable, raw and untamed. But he had control now. Lyra's eyes widened in surprise. She hadn't expected this. She hadn't expected him to awaken his true power. For the first time, she looked uncertain. "You think you can stop this?" she asked, her voice a mere whisper. James's gaze was unwavering. "I don't just think. It's knowing." With one final surge of power, James focused all of his energy into a single, concentrated strike. The force of it shattered the Wrecker's defenses, sending them scattering. Lyra was forced to retreat, her expression darkening. "You've won this battle." "James," she said, her voice filled with venom, "but the war is far from over." With that, she disappeared into the shadows, leaving James standing alone. The remnants of the battle still crackling in the air around him. The Wrecker were defeated for now, but this was just the beginning. James breathed heavily, his body still humming with energy. He had won, but the fight wasn't over. Not yet. War for humanity's future had just begun, and this time he would be ready. Asterisk.